Hey guys, welcome back to the Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is Prorevenge story. My best friend Tara is a first grade teacher, and as soon as she told me this story, it gave me such a justice boner that I knew I had to retell it here. Last year, Tara had a student named Marcus. Sweet little 6-year-old boy when things were good, but his parents had just gotten divorced. His mom wasn't that great even before she disappeared from the picture, and his dad was quite disengaged from both his son's behavior and his IEP, Individualized Education Plan. Rather understandably, Marcus acted out in class. He'd refuse to listen to Tara, push other kids, and disrupt class in more ways than I could possibly list. I just don't know what to do with him sometimes, Tara told me over coffee one weekend. Yesterday he refused to sit down for 20 minutes straight. Just wandered around the classroom, touching everything and everyone. Now, Tara worked her ass off with Marcus to improve his behavior and get his dad more involved in a positive way. She'd often call me and talk about it to decompress because that's what friends were for. But occasionally, Marcus went too far and did something she couldn't just deal with in class, like trying to stab another student in the hand with a pencil. "Marcus, we do not hurt our friends," Tara had shouted, quickly separating the boys. "He took my eraser," Marcus had yelled back, tears forming in his eyes. On those occasions, she wrote him up with a referral and sent him to the vice principal, Mr. Nelson. But surprise, surprise, Mr. Nelson was absolutely no help whatsoever. He'd joke around with Marcus, refuse to address the problem Tara sent Marcus there for, give him candy, and then lecture Tara for writing up a 6-year-old for any reason because it reflected badly on Mr. Nelson. I'm pretty sure this has to do with the bullcrap known as merit pay, but whatever. "So how did Marcus behave after trying to stab Jaden?" Tara had asked after school one day. Mr. Nelson had shrugged. "Kids will be kids. We had a good chat about dinosaurs." "But did you address the behavior issue?" Tara pressed. "Look, these referrals make my numbers look bad," Mr. Nelson said, frowning. "Maybe you should work on your classroom management instead of sending 6-year-olds to my office." Unfortunately, his actions made it significantly harder for Tara to help Marcus. To top it all off, Tara figured out after a few referrals that Mr. Nelson logged into the system and erased each of Marcus's referrals, thus erasing all evidence of Marcus's pattern of behavior. In a word, this is BAD. I know nothing about education, but damn well know that much. My brother was a holy terror in elementary school and got in so much trouble from 3rd to 6th grades that both the principal and vice principal were on a first-name basis with my mom. Those records sure didn't disappear, not into the shredder and certainly not into the digital ether. She reported this to her higher-ups who weren't Mr. Nelson, but they both told him about the complaint and specified that Tara was the one making the complaint. Mr. Nelson was cold with and rude to her after that. Nothing was done about it because it seemed to be a one-time thing. "I can't believe I put my neck on the line for nothing," Tara told me over drinks that Friday. "And now he won't even look me in the eye at staff meetings." "That's so messed up," I replied. "What are you going to do?" But now Tara knew what to do. Every time she had to write Marcus up again, which blessedly became less often as the year went on, she meticulously documented everything herself, sent herself all the relevant stuff, saved the emails, the whole shebang. Incident report, March 10th, 2024. Marcus threw blocks at another student during center time. She'd type into her personal records after school. Email sent to father, copy of referral attached, timestamp 1:32 p.m. By the end of the year, Marcus's behavior had greatly improved thanks to her mentoring and the various ways she learned how to engage with him in the classroom. She even talked to his 2nd grade teacher to make sure the woman knew how to work with Marcus. "He responds really well to 5-minute warnings before transitions," Tara explained to Miss Rivera, "and he needs frequent check-ins when he's working independently." God, Tara went above and beyond for this child. Partway through this school year, the higher-ups came to talk to Tara again. Even though nothing was done about her complaint the previous year, a record had been made of it. As it turns out, another teacher had reported Mr. Nelson for doing the exact same thing to her as he'd done to Tara. If she had anything related to her own ordeal, they wanted to see it. "Actually, I've been keeping my own records," Tara told them, trying to keep her excitement in check. "Would you like to see them?" Oh boy, did she. She gave them every single digital receipt she'd accumulated for the better part of a school year to compare with Mr. Nelson's, establishing a pattern of him undermining teachers via erasing students' patterns of behavior. "This is quite comprehensive," the principal said, scrolling through her documentation. 17 incidents, all with timestamps, parent communication logs, and detailed descriptions. "And not a single one appears in the official system," Tara pointed out. Mr. Nelson was quickly removed from his position as vice principal of Tara's school, even though he wasn't technically fired. He was just moved to a different school, and put in a much lesser position, and paid significantly less than before. I heard he's supervising the in-school suspension room at Washington Elementary now, Tara told me last week, unable to hide her smile. Karma's a idiot. Bonus, he taught history at Tara and Mai's high school while we attended it, and everyone loved him. I look forward to telling this whole story at our reunion because we sure don't like him now. The next one is an entitled people story. So this happened a few years back, and I still can't believe how entitled some people can be. I'm still laughing about how it all played out, and I figured you folks would appreciate this story of malicious compliance at its finest. I inherited a decent chunk of land from my grandfather, about 15 acres of mostly wooded property in what was becoming a pretty desirable area outside the city. The land had been in our family for decades, and while most of it was just forest, there was a beautiful cleared section right by a small lake that would make an amazing building spot someday. My grandfather had always talked about building a retirement home there, but he passed before he could make it happen. After I inherited the property, I wasn't in any rush to develop it. I had a good job in the city, and honestly, the land was increasing in value every year as urban sprawl crept closer. I figured I'd hold on to it as an investment and maybe build something there when I was ready to settle down. I visited maybe once every few months just to check on things and make sure nobody was dumping trash or anything. The property was pretty secluded, accessible by a narrow dirt road that branched off from the main county road. There were a few other large properties in the area, mostly owned by people who liked their privacy. The whole area had this rustic, back-to-nature vibe that was becoming increasingly popular with city folks looking for weekend retreats. Everything was fine for the first couple of years after I inherited the land. Then one day I decided to drive out there for my quarterly check, and I couldn't believe what I saw. There was a massive house under construction right on my best piece of property, the cleared area by the lake that I'd always imagined building on myself. I'm talking about a huge, ostentatious, mansion-style house that had to be at least 5,000 square feet, with multiple levels, enormous windows, and what looked like it was going to be a circular driveway. Construction crews were everywhere, and there were piles of expensive-looking materials stacked all around the site. My first thought was that I'd somehow gotten turned around and ended up on someone else's property, but no, this was definitely my land. I could see the old boundary markers my grandfather had shown me, and I recognized every tree and landmark. Someone was building a massive house right on my property without my permission. I parked and walked over to what looked like the foreman. I asked him who owned the property and who had hired them. He told me that a woman had contracted them to build her dream house, and that she'd handled all the permits and paperwork herself. He said she'd been very specific that this was her land, and that she had every right to build there. I didn't want to cause a scene with the work crew. They were just doing their job. So I got the contractor's information and headed home to figure out what was going on. I spent the next few hours digging through my property documents and confirming what I already knew. This was definitely my land, clearly marked on the deed and survey documents. The next day, I drove back out there, and this time I met Karen herself. She was a woman probably in her 50s, dressed in what looked like expensive casual clothes, standing there supervising the construction like she owned the place, which apparently she thought she did. I introduced myself and politely explained that there seemed to be some kind of mistake, because this was actually my property. Her reaction was immediate and intense. She started yelling about how she'd done her research, how she'd bought this land fair and square, and how I was obviously some kind of scammer trying to pull a fast one on her. She demanded to see my documentation, so I showed her the deed and the survey. She barely glanced at them before dismissing them as fake. She told me she'd been planning this house for years, that she'd already invested over $100,000 in construction, and that there was no way she was stopping now. Then came the part that really set up the malicious compliance. She told me that if I really thought this was my land, I should call the police or take her to court, but until then, she was going to continue building her dream house. She said that possession was 9/10 of the law, and since she was the one actually using the land, it was hers now. But here's where it gets really good. She then made a demand that was so unreasonable, I almost couldn't believe she was serious. She told me that since I was obviously confused about property boundaries, I should stop trespassing on what she claimed was her land. She demanded that I never set foot on the property again, and that if I did, she'd have me arrested for trespassing. She was literally demanding that I stay off my own property while she built a house on it without permission. The audacity was breathtaking. Now, I could have called the police right then and there, or gotten a lawyer involved immediately. But something about her entitled attitude and her ridiculous demand gave me a better idea. I decided I was going to comply with her request maliciously. I told her that I respected her position and that I wouldn't step foot on what she considered to be her property until the ownership question was resolved through proper legal channels. She seemed satisfied with this response and probably thought she'd scared me off. What Karen didn't realize was that by demanding I stay off the property, she'd just given me the perfect excuse to let her continue building and spending money on land she didn't own, while I took my time going through the proper legal process to reclaim it. See, if I'd stopped the construction immediately, Karen might have only lost the initial investment and some time. But by complying with her demand to stay away, I was allowing her to dig herself into a much deeper hole. Over the next several months, I watched from the county road as Karen's dream house took shape. I could see the construction progress from a distance, and it was clear she was sparing no expense. The house was absolutely massive, with what looked like imported stone, high-end windows, and custom architectural details that probably cost more than most people's entire homes. During this time, I wasn't idle. I hired a real estate attorney and started the legal process to establish my clear ownership of the land and get Karen's construction stopped. But legal processes take time, and I was in no hurry. Every day that passed was another day Karen was investing more money and effort into a house she'd never be able to keep. My lawyer was initially confused about why I didn't want to seek an emergency injunction to stop construction immediately. I explained my reasoning. Karen had demanded I stay off the property and let the legal system handle it, so that's exactly what I was going to do. If she wanted to keep building while the legal case proceeded, that was her choice. The construction continued for about 8 months total. By the time it was finished, Karen had built what was easily a $1 million custom home, complete with high-end appliances, custom millwork, imported fixtures, and professional landscaping. She'd even had a dock built on the lake and installed an expensive water filtration system. During the final months of construction, I noticed Karen was spending a lot of time at the property, clearly getting ready to move in. She'd even started having furniture delivered and had landscapers working on elaborate garden beds around the house. Finally, my lawyer completed the legal paperwork and obtained a court order confirming my ownership of the land and ordering Karen to cease all construction and remove any structures from the property. The sheriff served Karen with the papers on the same day she was scheduled to have her final inspection. I'll never forget the look on Karen's face when the sheriff showed up. I wasn't there personally. I was still complying with her demand to stay off the property, but my lawyer was there as a witness, and he said Karen's reaction was something to behold. She started screaming about how this was impossible, how she'd done her research, how she'd never seen any paperwork indicating someone else owned the land. The sheriff explained that the court order was very clear. She had 30 days to remove all structures and belongings from the property or face additional legal consequences. Karen tried every argument she could think of. She claimed squatters' rights, adverse possession, that she'd bought the land in good faith, that her contractor had assured her everything was legal. None of it mattered. The law was crystal clear. She'd built on someone else's land without permission, and now she had to deal with the consequences. But here's where the malicious compliance really paid off. If I'd stopped Karen's construction early on, she might have been able to relocate her plans to a different piece of land and only been out the initial costs in some time. Instead, by complying with her demand to stay away and let the legal system handle things, I'd allowed her to complete the entire project. Now she was faced with having spent probably close to $1 million building a house she couldn't keep, on land she'd never owned. And because of the way property law works, any improvements made to land become part of that land. Karen couldn't take her house with her. It was now permanently attached to my property. The 30-day deadline came and went. Karen tried to get an extension, tried to appeal the court decision, even tried to sue her contractor for not properly verifying the property ownership. Nothing worked. The law was completely on my side. Karen eventually had to accept that she'd lost everything. She'd spent her life savings building a dream house on someone else's land, and there was nothing she could do about it. The sheriff's department had to forcibly remove her belongings from the property when she refused to leave voluntarily. The final twist came when Karen tried to recover some of her costs by suing me for allowing her to build on my land when I knew she didn't own it. Her argument was that I should have stopped her immediately instead of letting her continue building. My lawyer had a field day with this one. He pointed out that Karen had specifically demanded that I stay off the property and let the legal system determine ownership. I had complied with her exact request. She couldn't sue me for doing exactly what she demanded I do. The judge dismissed her case immediately and even commented on the irony of someone suing for the consequences of their own demands. In the end, I ended up with $1 million custom home on my property that I'd never paid a cent for. Karen lost everything and had to move back in with relatives while she tried to rebuild her finances. The house is absolutely beautiful, by the way. Karen might have been entitled and unreasonable, but she had excellent taste in architecture and finishes. I eventually moved into the house myself, and it's exactly the kind of place I'd always dreamed of building on that land. Sometimes people ask me if I feel bad about what happened to Karen, and honestly, I don't. She chose to build on land without properly verifying ownership, ignored clear evidence that it wasn't her property, and then had the audacity to demand that the actual owner stay away. She got exactly what she asked for. I stayed away and let the legal system handle everything. It's not my fault that the legal system didn't rule in her favor. The whole experience taught me that sometimes the best response to unreasonable demands is to comply with them exactly as requested. Karen wanted me to stay off the property and let the courts decide ownership. Done. She wanted to continue building while the legal case proceeded. No problem. She wanted to invest her entire savings in a house on disputed property. That was her choice. Malicious compliance at its finest, if you ask me. The next one is a petty revenge story. So, I own a little construction firm, and we delivered our last building a few years ago. For context, where I live, the underground water level is very close to the ground, so our parking spaces underground usually have to be waterproof. As we are talking about 2.000 square meters of concrete, there are bound to have some cracks and leaks, and we will fix it in due time. In comes Karen. Her parking spot had a crack that was putting out a little water, and every time she got out of the car, she had to step on a wet surface. No puddle, just wet. Nothing wrong there, our obligation to fix it, but this woman goes and starts calling me and our team every hour, screaming, disrespecting my employees, calling them stupid, saying she's gonna sue if we don't fix it today, as we all try to calmly explain that we should do that after the rain season is over. But she just won't have it. So we come by and do the repair on her parking spot yesterday, in the rainiest week of the year. Because of the repair, she has to park her car on the street instead of the garage. For a week, I may or may not have been a little overly cautious on the time the concrete takes to be done. The streets are literally flooded, 2 to 3 centimeters water level, and now she has to wet a little more than the bottom of her shoes to get home for a week, and that just gave me a little bit of peace. The next one is a malicious compliance story. I've worked in computer security for a very long time. A security policy that I'm sure most of the audience here is familiar with is that you always lock your computer when you walk away. Even if you're an accountant or receptionist, you just can't leave your machine unlocked ever. About 10 years ago, my team would have fun with this. If you ran to the bathroom or even had a conversation with your back turned, someone would sneak up to your computer and jump on the chat client or even email and say something silly or stupid like, "Does anyone know the meaning of life?" or some other random thing. A lot of the teams would do this, and it was mostly harmless, but also was supposed to shame you into remembering to lock your computer before you walk away without reporting you to security for your formal reprimand, retraining, write-ups, disciplinary action, job hunt. Everyone knew it was good-natured, and when the messages went out, everyone had a good laugh. One day, a new guy shows up and he leaves his computer unattended. I introduce myself, shake his hand, chat him up a bit, and finally tell him he needs to lock his computer when he walks away. It's company policy. He probably ignored that in the training, but it's a big deal. Sent him the documentation because he thinks it's stupid. Again, we're in the security umbrella. He says whatever. I shrug, walk away, and he walks away making a show of not locking his computer. He got multiple warnings over his first few weeks from his team and other, but was a complete butt about it. After a while, the team decides he's had enough warnings, and started being granted access to sensitive stuff, and so he was fair game. Not long after, I walked by him on his way to the elevator atrium, so I know he's going to be gone for a while. I sit down, find his email client, and type out a silly message to his team's DL and hit send. As I'm standing up, he's walking back. He finds me and demands to know what I was doing. I shrug, say whatever, and walk away. Later that day, his manager walks up and tells me that he explained the situation to his new employee, and that the new guy didn't want to play that game, and was considering reporting me to security for impersonating him. Really? Okay, no problem, Mr. Manager. We were on very good terms. We will not play the game with your newbie. I will follow standard procedures. I got my team and a few others on chat to tell them that under no circumstances should anybody fire a message from him when they saw his computer unlocked. No shame reminders for newbie. Just follow the standard procedure. Almost 50 security violation tickets were logged in the next 2 days. His desk happened to be closer to the elevator atrium, break room, and bathroom, so a lot of normal traffic. He was in security retraining the following Monday. We were in an open floor plan, and I could see how mad he was talking to his manager and gesturing in my direction quite a bit. Not my fault, I had only opened 2 tickets. His manager asked me to let up. Sorry, just following standard procedure. If I don't report these violations, I'm liable. Dude's computer was locked for the rest of that Monday only. The following day, as I walked by, there was his email, for all eyes to see, and newbie nowhere to be found. He happened to be getting coffee, which was my destination as well, and I noticed he forgot to lock his computer. He cussed me out and speed walked back. The damage was done. He'd already had a dozen tickets opened by others, and the security policy had changed at some point. Now it was a quick retraining, then straight to disciplinary action, no write-up. He had to attend a meeting with his boss, director, and some security folks. I would find out much later that he got put on a security-related PIP. He was gone in a week. No one was out to ruin anyone's career here, but if you want to work in security and flagrantly violate policy because, I don't know why, well, you don't belong there. The next one is an entitled people story. This happened about 7 years ago, and I still can't quite get over it. For context, when I was a young mom of 2, I worked as a waiter and was barely making it. There were times that money was so tight I'd feel panicky when my kids' friends would come over after school and want an apple, because I'd bought just enough for my own kids' lunches that week. All of our clothes came from thrift stores and garage sales out of necessity. Fast forward to now, when things are so much better. But old habits die hard, and I still love to thrift and garage sale. Not out of necessity anymore, but because I know the amazing treasures that lurk there, and love the thrill of the hunt. One day I was in line at our local thrift, and the 30-something woman in front of me was holding a beautiful blue silk Madewell slip dress, pleading with the women behind the counter, saying she hadn't realized when she bought the previous week that it had a tear, and she wanted her money back. There are no returns, no refunds signs everywhere in this store, and the women behind the counter pointed to them and said no. The woman said, "Please, please, please, I paid $15 for this dress that I need for a wedding this month. It's damaged and I can't wear it." Everyone in line was watching this, and some people were getting impatient, but I was flooded with empathy. $15 doesn't sound like much money, just like an apple for an 8-year-old guest isn't much food. But it brought me immediately back to what it was like walking that tightrope. I happened to be a pretty good and inventive seamstress, so I stepped up and said, "Hey, could you show me the tear?" The woman spun around and held it up for me, a small horizontal slit on the side just above the hip. I said, "I can fix that for you, for free. I'd love the challenge. It'll take me a few days. Will that work?" She kind of awkwardly gave me the dress. We exchanged info, and the women behind the counter looked relieved. I patched the tear with some blue silk velvet. I'd cut it into a small flower shape, and sewed a tiny rhinestone vintage button in the center. It looked intentional, and in my humble opinion, even better than before. I was so psyched to have done this good deed and to have rescued a pretty dress, which is also a passion of mine. I texted the woman, we'll call her Jane, and sent her pictures of the dress. She wrote back and said she loved it and would come pick it up that afternoon. I told her I'd be out, but I'd put it on the porch in a bag. When I came home that evening, the bag was still there. I texted Jane the next morning and asked her if she'd like me to leave it out again. She said yes, and that she'd be by that day. This went on for another few days. I stopped texting, and the bag and dress just sat there. After a week, I decided to bring it into the house and see what would happen next. About 10 days later, Jane texted me and told me she was sorry that she hadn't come by, but that she was a really busy mother of young kids, and also taught yoga classes, and she didn't have time to come get it. She told me where she lived, about 10 minutes from my house, which, BTW, is between her house and the center of town, where the only grocery store in the area is, and asked me if I would bring it to her instead. There aren't that many great things about getting old, but one of them, for me at least, is knowing what to do and what not to do in most situations based on collective life experience. Also, a better understanding of my own motives. I'd seen a desperate young woman who was panicking about the $15 she'd splurged on a dress she couldn't wear. I saw myself in her shoes, remembered my own desperation, and thought, I can be a hero. With a little kindness, I can write a tiny piece of the universe for her with a small gesture, and she'll be so grateful. So, maybe not entirely selfless. Maybe I wanted the endorphin rush of helping someone. Or maybe I just wanted to be the kind maternal figure who comes to the rescue that I hadn't had myself when I was her age. But when she asked me to drive the dress that I'd spend an hour or so repairing for her for free to her house because she was too busy to come and get it, I had an immediate reset. I said, "No, rats, I won't be able to do that, but just text me the next time you know you'll be in my neighborhood and I'll set it out for you." I'll add that there was a notable lack of any kind of appreciation on her part through the whole process. I don't think she ever said thank you once. Another month went by with nothing from Jane, so presumably the wedding she'd bought it for had come and gone. One day, when one of my DILs, who also loves to thrift, was visiting, I told her the story and showed her the dress. She said she loved it and asked to try it on. It fit her perfectly. She said to let her know if Jane never came for it because she would love to have it. I told her to just take it with her, that it was pretty clear that Jane was not coming for it. I will say I'd noticed during the repair that the dress had been worn. There was even a small stain on the bodice. I'd treated and washed it, and it came out, but I eventually figured out that Jane had bought the dress, worn the dress, torn the dress herself, and was trying to scam the thrift store by saying it was torn when she bought it. Believe it or not, almost 3 months later, Jane called me one day and said, "I'll be in your neighborhood this afternoon. Could you put the dress out for me?" No apologies or explanations. It gave me no small satisfaction to tell her that I was so sorry, but because I hadn't heard from her for so long, I'd thought she didn't want it after all, and had given it away. She said, "Okay," and hung up. FYI, I love weird stories, and the weirdness of this one made the experience worth it. Also, this isn't a cautionary tale about reasons you shouldn't help people. One entitled Jane won't stop me from offering to help people who need it whenever I can. The next one is an entitled parent story. So, for context, I am M21, and my wife is F21. We live on our own with our own car gifted to me on my 18th birthday. It has been owned before me 3 times and been in multiple accidents by family members, but still drives now that I own it. The washer and dryer mentioned is in our name. We own them. We just can't get them ATM. My mom just got her car towed and doesn't have another one and has other family she can ask, but asked us to bring my car to her to use it for the day after dropping us off at home with no car and giving it back tomorrow, and I simply said I don't mind, but I find it absurd. The whole situation, I mean. Mom, are you awake, me? Now I am. Mom, I don't have a car. Me. Oh, Mom, can you guys come do laundry today so me and blank can go pay one of his bills and go look at the car? Me. Does it have to be today? We've both had no sleep. We woke up after only 2 hours, plus tomorrow would be better since we don't have anything to do. We have to go to the store and get PB and dog food and stuff. Mom, can you just come bring me your car and we will bring it back to pick you up tomorrow to do laundry? Me. Wait, so you want my car until tomorrow? Mom, if you want to sleep, then you won't have to bring me back home, Mom. I'll just come get you tomorrow. Me, I'm so confused, me. Can you please slow down and actually type out everything that you're trying to say, because these little hints are not helping me at all. She then texts my wife's phone and asks the same question, then calls her phone. Basically, she asks again, and I tell her that I think it's absurd to ask that knowing we don't barely have money and don't have another car. And my family is very car accident prone, and she starts crying and brings up that she's the one who got me that car even though it's in my name and has been for 3 years now, and starts getting upset, hanging up on the call. Here's the rest of the conversation on my phone. Me. Okay, look, I love you, and I don't know why you're getting so emotional and everything. Again, let me say in bold parentheses, I never said that, you can't take my car. All I said was that I found it a little absurd, which is my opinion. We can still go through with your plan, but I'm allowed to have my own opinion, and I really don't understand why you're sitting here about to cry over the phone for no reason just because of something I said. I can understand it if you've helped us all this time, or me all this time, and then I tell, with no given reason or explanation. But I didn't even tell you, no, all I said was I found it a little absurd. I don't understand what's going on right now, but it's very strange. I love you and all, but that was very strange. Mom, why would you find it absurd I have no car? Now I have nothing. I helped you when you had nothing, and all I am asking is for help. But never mind, it's absurd for me of all people that you owe over $9,000 to for me to ask one favor. The money she's talking about is to help us pay rent a couple of times when we were on our own and she helped us out. Our rent was only $11.74 and she only helped us pay that twice and didn't sign a contract that we owed her that money, so it's just word of mouth. And from the beginning, she's not only used that to hold over our heads to get what she wants, and the amount has changed every time. It started with $5,000, which even that didn't equal the 2 times she helped us, and has just gone up every time. Mom, how dare you, me? Mom, you keep saying that I shouldn't be saying it's absurd, but you're leaving out the part where I said it's absurd, but I never said no. I'm entitled to my own opinion, free speech is a thing, and also you keep saying that I said it was absurd for you to use my car. You're not asking to use my car, you're asking to take my car for an entire day and night, and return it the next day. Of course I'm gonna find that absurd, and what do you mean? How dare I? Like what? Me. Look, I don't have a problem with you borrowing my car for a day or night. I just want you to know that you were in full responsibility of said car, and if anything happens to it, is your responsibility to fix and replace it. But other than that, I have no problem with you borrowing it, especially if we're gonna go do stuff tomorrow, like our laundry and stuff. But if even that is a problem for you, or you have an issue with that, you're more than welcome to go. Ask blank. If my opinion is that much of an issue to you that even me telling you flat out that you can use my car, but that my opinion still stands, if that's too much for Vuvu, can go ask blank. My opinion is my opinion. I can have it if I want, it doesn't stop you, but like I said, if anything happens to the car, it is your responsibility to replace or fix it. That's it. Take it or leave it. Mom. You may not do laundry at my house tomorrow. If you need to do laundry, you can come and get your washer and dryer. Me. Are you being serious right now, even after what I just said about how I didn't mind? Okay, that's fine. You may not borrow my car then. Mom. Yes, that's how I feel. Me. Because you are telling me to ask blank. Because you really don't want me borrowing your car, so you needed to ligger out. Now, Lo, pay me for the phone bill every month, and the money you owe me, you need to start making monthly payments. The monthly payments are not in contract, and she's referring to the money she says we owe her, even though it was never legally binded, and we've had financial issues for the last year and a half, and she knows that. Me. Number 1. Again, it's my opinion. Number 2. I told you to ask blank. If you didn't agree with my opinion, or didn't care for my opinion, which you are valid to do, but telling me how dare I have an opinion, or how dare I say something even though Liv already said that I was okay with it, like come on now. And number 3, the reason that I'm a little uncomfortable with you borrowing my car for an entire day or night is because everyone in my family besides me, whether it's their fault or not, seems to get into an accident sometimes, and I don't have a second option. And I don't have connections like you do, so if I lose my car, that's it. It's game over, so of course it'd be a little uncomfortable, but did I tell you no I didn't? I am now, because you're being unreasonable. But I didn't say no at first, which is what I told you multiple times. I love you, I really do, but this is being very extra for no reason. Anyway,